Hello, and welcome to Reimagining Love. I'm Dr. Alexandra Solomon. I have been studying relationships for over 20 years as a couples therapist, a professor, an award-winning author, and as a wife, mother, daughter, sister, and friend. Now, I'm inviting you into this space each week as I dig into some of the toughest and most fascinating relational dilemmas of our time. If you want to discover how to create vibrant and loving relationships in your own life, you have come to the right place. This is Reimagining Love. Hi there. Welcome back to Reimagining Love. In our modern world, we've seen a remarkable increase in anxiety and depression, particularly in young people. Not to mention, we know there's a loneliness epidemic. We're dealing with burnout. We're dealing with stress. And all of these factors greatly compromise our sense of well-being and compromise our ability to connect with each other. Well, today's guest explored achievement culture and shared her findings in her 2023 book called Never Enough. And along the way, she ended up identifying that a sense of mattering is an anchor that has the power to offset the soul-sucking effects of trying to achieve in high-pressure environments. That guest is the award-winning journalist and best-selling author, Jennie Wallace, and she's here with us today to make the case for why feeling like we matter is essential to our well-being and how prioritizing this need is a remedy to our modern mental health dilemmas. We all know I love an equation, so here's my new favorite equation from Jennie Wallace. Feeling valued plus having the opportunity to add value equals mattering. In this conversation, you're going to hear some of the stories about the people that Jennie met along the way as she researched her new book. The new book is called Mattering: The Secret to Building a Life of Deep Connection and Purpose. And those stories demonstrate why mattering matters. You're going to also hear about simple practices that folks have integrated into their daily lives to develop and cultivate a sense of mattering in themselves, as well as to convey to others that they matter to them. You're going to hear us break down the aspects of our culture that impact our sense of mattering, and then how we can push back, how we can respond counterculturally with actions that protect our, quote, mattering core, as Jennie calls it. And you're going to hear Jennie's thoughts on flake culture, which is the normalization of bailing on plans that we've made and how it harms our own sense of mattering as well as does harm to those around us. I'm very excited for you to hear from the brilliant Jennie Wallace. Jennie, thank you for being here with me today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be back. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have so much that I want to talk to you about from your beautiful, beautiful new book. It was so touching. And I've already thought of so many people that I want to pass this book along to. So first thing of all, thank you for putting your good work out into the world.
Oh, thanks for saying that.
Yeah. I want to start though by asking you the Reimagining Love question. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
Okay. Jennie, how are you reimagining love in one of your important relationships these days?
So I will say that I am reimagining love with myself.
Oh.
This is coming out of the work that I was doing on mattering. And what I learned in digging through the research is that often caregivers put their own needs at the bottom of lists. And so I am making a point every day to think about one thing I need to prioritize, one of my needs, in order for me to show up and be my best self for the people who depend on me every day. And it's usually just waking up early to have a cup of coffee in peace at my kitchen table.
Mm-hmm.
It might be spending an hour with friends, connecting, going for a walk, But what I have realized, especially in these busy years with 3 teenagers and writing books and going on book tours, is that I need to prioritize myself in order to maintain the energy that I need to be able to do all the things that are important to me.
I remember years ago, Michelle Obama saying that was like a light bulb moment for her. It was like, wait a minute, self-care actually at the end of the day is not about me. It's about how can I care for myself so that I don't bring some crusty energy to the people around me. But that feels so paradoxical. And there's so many reasons to put ourselves at the bottom of the list. So I love that I love that you're making a daily practice of, okay, so on my to-do list today, there has to be one thing that is for me and about what I need.
Yes. And for some people, it's very personal. For some people, it might be a woman I interviewed for my book talked about how she needs an hour walk in the woods every day. She lives, she lives in the country, and she said, rain, snow, sleet. If I don't have that hour, I am not the parent I want to be. I'm not the employee I want to be. And so she really makes a point, and her family knows this is 1 hour that is hers every day.
That's great. As you have started to do this for yourself, what have you noticed inside of you?
I've noticed energy. I mean, I used to think about managing my time, and I was very good at managing my time, but I wasn't mindful about managing my energy. And what I have found is that if I really want to hit my goals, whether those goals are to be present, more present for my kids, more present for my husband, being able to hit deadlines for my work, that I need to manage my energy, not just my time. And so what I give to myself every day, and I really guard this, and it's so funny. I'm looking to see if I have it on my desk. I usually have on my desk, but for some reason I moved it. Oh, I see it. It's on my coffee table. I have a tiger that I leave on my desk. It's a ceramic Italian tiger that is a protection against outside energy. This is for me to be able to get my work done that is just for me. And so often that early morning wake up is for me to do the work that's really important for me that day, whether it's editing a chapter or, thinking about connections between ideas. But I really guard that time. And I put that tiger on my desk as a reminder that I have to guard that time. That means I can't be answering emails that are not
Yeah.
urgent. I
Yeah.
can't be signing permission slips that are not urgent. I can't be doing for others and other people's to-do lists. I need to be mindful about mine. And then once I do that, then it opens me up to the rest of the day, and I don't feel resentful. I feel like I've given to myself, and now I can freely give to others.
I'm going to really work with that shift of protecting time versus protecting energy, because there's a kind of introspection that has to happen. If what you're going to protect is your energy, you have to know what are the ebbs and flows of my energy over the course of a day or the course of a week. And certainly I'm going to protect my energy by putting time boundaries around it, but it's a really different way into that, because I know I can protect an hour and then there was no point in protecting that hour because I didn't use it. My energy didn't match what that task required of me.
That's right. And also to be mindful during the day of things that can, like daily hassles that can drain your energy, and to be mindful and protective of your energy through those daily hassles. So I live in New York City. So a major daily hassle is unexpected traffic. And it could, if if I had budgeted 30 minutes and then all of a sudden it took me an hour to get to where I was going, I could be annoyed by that, but that is a waste of my energy. So I am really mindful to say, I'm going to guard my energy on and use it on things that I can control, and not use it to ruminate or to
Yep.
worry or to let those little daily hassles accumulate inside of me. And so it's enabled me to just protect, again, it's protecting my energy.
Yeah, because I love it. It's like your energy is yours it's yours and it's precious. It's worthy of protection and you get to be in charge of where it gets spent. And so you could spend it on the hassle of driving, you could spend it that way. But if you become aware of this is yours to protect, then you're not going to want to spend it there.
Exactly. It's like a waste of energy. I think about my energy like money in the bank. And there's a finite amount of energy I have in a day. And where do I want to spend it? Do I want to spend it, and there are things in life that you have to do, right? The paperwork, the kids' forms, the health forms, which just are constant. But then there's other energy. And I think, and here's the other thing that I do think about, especially on the very busy work days. Am I spending all of my energy at work so that I come back to my kids and I don't have the energy that I want to be present with them? There's this great research that I found in researching my book about the long arm of the job, which means that what happens at work doesn't stay at work. It spills over into your personal relationships. It spills over even into your civic engagement. And so if you are mindful in your workday to build relationships that support you, to do work that is meaningful to you, and even if it's work that you wouldn't have chosen, but it pays the bills, is there a way of, in your own mind, placing your work as part of a bigger picture, allowing you to do things that are meaningful to you? And so really also being mindful of the energy that we spend at work, the positive and the negative energy that we spend at work, so that we can come home and be those first responders that we want to be for our kids, for our aging parents, whatever it may be. So I'm also, I guess this has become, especially since I've been researching mattering, I know how important it is to matter to myself. And if I don't matter to myself, it is hard to matter to others.
Yep. Those are inextricably bound. And I think especially as women, as high achieving women, as mothers, it's very easy to believe that the mattering is what is everybody else, and to leave ourselves, and to forget about mattering to ourselves. If I matter to myself, what does that mean about how I spend a day and a week and a month and a year? Yeah. Let's talk about mattering. This is your new book, and it is your second book. Your first book was called Never Enough. It was a New York Times bestseller exploring achievement culture. And you share at the beginning of Mattering that really mattering was kind of knocking on your door as you were working on Never Enough. So talk to us about the signs that were kind of underneath achievement culture that were directing you towards this deeper and more profound human hunger to matter.
Yeah. So I really wish this new book, Mattering, was the big book that I'd written first.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I didn't know about Mattering until halfway through my research for Never Enough. I was looking. So Never Enough was really based on an article I wrote for the Washington Post about how children who were attending high achieving schools, public and private schools around the country, were now officially an at-risk group, meaning they were 2 to 6 times more likely to suffer from clinical levels of anxiety and depression. And so I went in search of the kids who were doing well, despite the pressure, to see what they had in common. And it boiled down to mattering, that the kids who were doing well in these high pressured environments felt like they mattered for who they were deep at their core, away from their achievements and successes. And what I heard often from the kids who were not faring well, who were reporting high levels of anxiety or depression, were kids who felt like their sense of mattering, their sense of feeling valued was contingent on their performance. So they only felt worthy, they only felt good about themselves when they were performing. And when they had setbacks or failures, those felt like indictments of their worth. And what I was hearing over and over again from the adults, I was interviewing families around the country, was that so many adults felt like they didn't matter. Whether they were working in hospitals as medical professionals, feeling crushed by insurance companies, whether they were first responders, feeling burnt out, like their needs didn't matter, whether they were working in finance and feeling like cogs in a wheel, replaceable, whether they felt invisible in their neighborhoods, or hollowed out. Their friendships felt hollowed out because they didn't have the time or the bandwidth to invest in them the way they wish they'd had. And so what I was realizing, according to decades worth of resilience research, is that our children's resilience rests on the resilience of the adults in their lives. And adult resilience rests on this sense of mattering, feeling valued to your family, to your friends, to your community, and having an opportunity to add value back. And so this book, we are right to be sounding the alarm of the youth mental health crisis, but we would be just as right to be sounding the alarm of the mental health crisis of the adults in their lives. Teachers are burnt out, caregivers are burnt out, anxious, depressed at rates equal to young people. And so this book is really about what mattering is. It is a deep, fundamental human need to feel valued and to have an opportunity to add value. And this need is going unmet for so many people. It's very tempting to treat mattering as a nice to have, right? We were talking about mattering to ourselves. Oh, it would be nice to have. After you get through your whole to-do list, then it would be nice to matter to yourself. But it isn't. It is at the root of our anxiety and burnout and loneliness, this unmet need. So we need to prioritize this need individually, in our families, with our friends, and in the wider culture and in the workplace. So this book really explains this need, how it is going unmet, and how we can build up what I call in the book our mattering core so that we can show up for ourselves and for the people that we care about.
In just a moment, I want you to talk to us about the 5 pillars. As a psychologist, I do love a concept that's got 5, just a nice set of pillars that undergird it. So I want you really to operationalize it for us in just a moment. But before we do that, your research for this book included talking to 200 different people from all over the world and getting their stories. Is there a story that kind of stands out to you as like a North Star in this work, or a story that particularly challenged or cemented your understanding that you could give us a little window into?
Oh my gosh, hard to pick one story.
It's hard to pick the favorite, baby.
I'm going to give you the story of a firefighter named Greg.
I love this one.
I start the book, chapter 1. So I was drawn to firefighters because I was thinking, who are the people who are working jobs that are so purposeful and meaningful? And as I thought, first responders, firefighters, they must know the purpose and meaning of their work. And then I started looking into the data and was surprised to find that firefighters are tragically dying by suicide more than they are on the job. And I was reading at these excessively high rates of burnout. And so I went in search of firefighters who were doing well, despite the pressures of their workplaces. And I came across a fire chief named Greg in North Charleston, South Carolina. And I went and I spent time there. I rode on fire trucks and went with them to fires and to medical rescues. And what I didn't know is that firefighters are often the first to arrive at the scene of an accident or a medical emergency. And then EMS takes over and takes them to the hospital. And what I didn't understand is that firefighters never know what happened next. They're the first to arrive at a car crash, at a heart attack, at a house fire, and they never know if their actions saved a life. If the person that they extracted from the car ever walked again. And that can lead to burnout and cynicism. And so Greg, the fire chief that I spent time with, created a system to change that. He began to track the outcomes of rescues because he wanted his firefighters to know when their actions had saved a life or eased someone's suffering, because he knew something vital, that it's not enough to do important work. We need to know our work makes a difference. We need to know we matter. And so the Greg story, really, we can extrapolate into our everyday lives. You don't have to be a firefighter to want to know that what you do makes a difference in other people's lives. We all crave that social proof that we matter. And there are ways we can meet that in other people. I've started to, ever since learning about Greg and understanding that people are going around with this unmet need, this question. So I've challenged myself. I don't always do it well, but I've challenged myself to envision everyone I meet, including strangers, wearing an invisible sign that says, "Tell me, do I matter?" We can all answer that question with kindness, compassion, a warm smile. If somebody's acting out, we can think, oh, is this a sign that maybe they feel like they don't matter? Because people will go to extremes to prove that they matter. And so anyway, that's something that I took from Greg, and how it's important for all of us to connect to our impact, connect to the things that we do every day. And so I've started this little 2-point, I don't even want to call it a gratitude journal. It's a mattering journal. And I ask myself every night as I'm falling asleep with my eyes closed. I have a friend who's also doing this, and she's writing it down in a little notebook. 2 questions really get to the heart of mattering. Where did I add value today? Even in a small way. Maybe it was my daughter having social trouble with friends. Did I give her advice? Maybe it was, calling up a friend who was going through a hard time and checking in on her. So how did I add value in a small way? And how did someone add value to my life, even in a small way? And that there are some days where I'll be in the Costco parking lot and I will see somebody looking for a spot and I'll let them have the spot, even though I was next up, right? That's a small way of adding value to that person's life. So what I've come to realize in researching mattering is that we are all one action away of feeling like we matter. Let
Mhm.
somebody merge into traffic. Uh, Sending a simple text to someone in your life that says, if it wasn't for you, dot, dot, dot. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have, had the courage to go for that job interview. Thank you for believing in me before I believed in myself. Really sharing how the people in our lives make an impact, like Greg, that firefighter. How can we reveal the impact that others have on our lives and normalize saying it? Just normalize it.
I was so struck by the Greg story. And even though my work couldn't be further from the work of a firefighter, it really clicked in place something for me that is a challenge. And, part of my work is I'm a therapist. So I'm with people week to week. I can see and feel the impact of that relationship over time. But another big part of my work is creating these podcasts, creating books, creating social media posts where the only feedback loop is if somebody takes the time to let me know how an episode or a post or a chapter of the book impacted them. And when I get those little points of feedback, it is like, I always tell the person, you have no idea how much that means and it was like, oh, that's it. I don't know what the impact is. And there's something for me, I think in my life that is liberating about that I'm not in charge of the impact. I think that I have a long history of feeling sort of overly responsible for impact. So there's something that's liberating about it. But at the same time, I do know that it can fuel for me feelings of exhaustion and burnout and bigger questions about what is all of this doing. So I was so fascinated by the way in which Greg's story, which is a world that is radically different than my world, really held something. So I'm imagining now listeners to this conversation that we're having, thinking about that. Oh yeah, that makes sense to me that there is this place in my work life where I don't quite know what happens, down the road in terms of what I did. I'm one part of a whole, but I don't know necessarily where it goes from here, and that has an impact on us.
It does. There's a woman, I interviewed a few people. This book is a very sort of how to build up your own sense of mattering. And a woman that I interviewed talked about, she works as a consultant. She works alone in her house, in her home office, and she has created an impact file. And every time she gets a thank you note Or, for example, on your Instagram posts, she might screenshot it and add it to this electronic file that she keeps so that when she is wondering, does any of this matter? She can go back to that impact file and connect to her impact. So it could be a digital file you keep in, this woman keeps it in her Google Docs. And it's a way of tracking her impact over time. She has also created, which I thought was very sweet, a kind of trophy wall. So when her work as a consultant is mentioned in a company newsletter or is mentioned in a press clipping, she will cut it out and frame it and put it up on her wall as a reminder that her work matters. It is making a difference.
I remember that part of the book as well. And it was, again, like, oh yeah, that's not bragging. That's not narcissism. That's not ego. That's not grandiosity. That truly is mattering. I think it makes the entire exercise of the impact file or the trophy wall, it feels different. It sits different inside when you're able to understand it through the lens of mattering and the profound connection between mattering and burnout, mattering and loneliness, mattering, and all of these mental health and relational health outcomes.
That's exactly right. It is not narcissism. We are social creatures, and we crave, because of our wiring by evolution, we crave the social proof that we matter to the world around us. So to our earliest ancestors, feeling valued by the group and knowing you added value to the group was a protective, right? If you were not valued by the group, if you were cast aside, that meant certain death. While we're not necessarily facing life or death issues these days, our wiring is such that we need to know we make a difference to the people around us. That is just our evolutionary wiring. You don't need to deny that. You want to feed it, because when you don't feed it, that's when you feel the burnout and the loneliness.
In your stories, you were looking cross-culturally, and I'm wondering what you noticed in terms of cultural differences. Were there places where mattering seemed more cemented in, more fragile, like where it kind of manifests in different ways?
I will say mattering is most fragile here in the United States. And I don't think it would surprise anybody to hear this.
Yeah.
We are a hyper individualistic culture. We've always been pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of culture, but it has been accelerated over the last several decades. There's been research done by Robert Putnam talking about how we've pulled away from institutions that once gave us a sense of community. Religion, for example, I'm not saying religion is a panacea, but religion gave us an ecosystem that fed mattering. So even if it was just 1 hour of service a week, it was an hour where we were able to hear that, most religions, major religions, talk about unconditional worth, right? So that was one place where we would be reminded that we are not our successes and not our failures, that we are loved by our God unconditionally. It's also a place where we felt a part of a bigger whole. It was a place, most religions encourage community and service and adding values to others. So when we took away religion, when we as a culture stopped going and bowling in bowling leagues, for example, Robert Putnam's metaphor, when our neighborhoods became, more isolated, right? Neighbors don't know each other anymore. Families have become these one family, one household villages. And it's we caregivers that are bearing the brunt of this hyper individualism. So what mattering does is it reminds us that we are social creatures, that we need to create these, I call them in the book, sort of these cultures of mattering, these mattering spaces in our lives where we can feed our sense of mattering and also feed the sense of mattering to the people around us. But here in the US, we have really, and technology has only exacerbated and magnified it, right? We used to watch TV just thinking like, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, families had one TV. We would watch it as a family. We'd laugh. It would be shared content. Now we watch our iPads alone in our rooms or on our phones. So we've just continued to isolate. We're acting like we're not social beings when we are. And it is damaging us. I often think about this. What does it look like to be healthy in an unhealthy culture? It is to be countercultural. I mean, the people that I met who are doing well were countercultural. They were intentional about building relationships that fed that sense of mattering. And they were intentional about letting the people around them know why they mattered to them.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned it a moment ago, but I loved the example of the gal who does the "if it weren't for you, dot, dot, dot." And I think that's such a simple, like everyone who's listening could send that text today, but she makes it a practice. She, in her workplace, she makes it a practice of if it wasn't for you. And that's one of the 5 pillars of mattering is recognition. And recognition is that like, oh, wait, if you weren't here, this wouldn't be the same. Like that, the power of you being here is I would notice if you weren't here. It's the guilt trip I give my college students on day 1 of my Marriage 101 class. It's like, listen, you're going to be part of a small breakout group. And yes, attendance is a small part of your overall grade, but the group's going to know when you aren't here. If you aren't here with the group, you aren't like the group isn't the group, like your presence matters because your absence is going to be felt. So that recognition of we know when you're here and we certainly know when you're not here. We would feel it without you.
I love that. I love that you make a point of that. I have 3 children who are more quiet, more introverted, and their teachers have always said they need to participate more in class. They need to participate more in class. And it was always framed that your participation is going to be a part of your grade. And I started reframing it through the lens of mattering. And I said to my kids, you have to participate in class because your voice matters. Your perspective, your questions matter to the group. You benefit from when other people speak up, when other people ask questions, when other people add value to the conversation. You have to carry your weight. That is why you participate, not for your grade, but because you're part of a bigger community that's relying on you to add value, even if it's just a question.
Yeah. Yeah.
So researchers have been researching mattering since the 1980s, and they have discovered that there are certain ingredients that make up a sense of mattering. And I'd love to share them with you. I've created this framework called the SAID framework, SAID, so that it's easy to remember. So S stands for significant. So now, to feel significant doesn't mean you need to be the Queen of England or a parade to be thrown in your honor. To feel significant means that you are prioritized in small ways in the lives of the relationships that you participate in. So feeling a sense of significance is feeling when, as you were noting, is when people notice your absence, when you don't show up at work for a few days and people call you to check in on you. That is a sense of significance. Feeling significant is really in the details. There was a story. I was giving a keynote and it was at a national conference and a teacher was receiving an award, a national award. But what made him tear up was that his colleagues who were handing him the award also gave him a huge jar of M&Ms. And they said, this is his favorite 3:00 treat. This is where he goes. And what made him tear up was that he felt seen and known, right? That is how he feels significant. It is that the details of our life are worth remembering, that we are worth remembering. So that's significance. Appreciation. Appreciation is there are different ways that we can appreciate people. There are ways that we can appreciate, let's say a friend gives you a beautiful sweater for your birthday. You could say to your friend, thank you for this beautiful sweater. I love it. Or you can offer appreciation that feeds your friend's sense of mattering. You can say, you are always so thoughtful. Oh my goodness. Thank you for picking out this sweater in my favorite color blue. Oh, look at how you wrapped this. You always make me feel so cared for. You are the most generous, kind friend. I am so lucky to have it. It's about the person, not the present. I think about it in my head as appreciation of the doer, not just the deed, right? So the next part of the SAID framework is invested in. It is feeling that people are invested in your successes, in your failures, that you have people to celebrate your joys. The last D in the SET framework is depended on, is knowing you are relied and depended on. When you don't show up for class, the class suffers. It's less good. Or for my teenagers, I depend on them maybe a little too much with their technology. And I say, can somebody help me set up this microphone for podcasts? Can somebody help me do this and do that? But I rely on them. I depend on them to add value. Chores at home are a great way of saying to our children, you are relied on and depended on. With our colleagues, it could be appreciating a colleague who really helped with a report and saying, I am so grateful that I can always depend on you. You are so reliable to me. So significance, appreciated, invested in, dependent on is how we feel a sense of mattering and how we can foster a sense of mattering in the people that we care about.
That last one about depending, I really like that you are reminding us that depending goes up the family tree as well as down. I think in this very much like Parenting Inc. world, it's so much about what the parents are doing for the kids. And it's so essential that kids have a sense of if I didn't do this job, it wouldn't get done. That the parents can rely on the kids and can depend on the kids, not in a burdening way, but in a way that's this is part of how you matter. It's not you matter just because you are here with us, but you matter because you're part of how this whole family keeps on chugging along.
That's right. And for parents, family is the first introduction to society for a child. And so learning how to be a valued and valuable member of the family is how we teach our children to be these good citizens of the world. That it's not just for you that you are here on this earth. You are here to be better for others. That's a Jesuit motto that I've really adopted in my own home, which is, we are successful not to be better than others, but to be better for others because we matter. We matter to the bigger whole. We matter to our neighborhood. We matter to our workplace.
You make a nice distinction about the difference between obligation and responsibility. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think there is this okay, where does what's the relationship between mattering and being needed? What's the relationship, the line between an obligation and a responsibility? Can you just help us understand that a little bit?
Right. So let me back up by talking about mattering is a balancing act, and we're not always going to get it right, but it's balancing mattering to ourselves and mattering to others. And so when I think about things like obligation and responsibility, in our culture, we have oversimplified the idea that I want to protect my boundaries and my energy.
Don't even get me started on that.
I mean, it's so misguided.
Yeah.
And it is so damaging, not only to our community and to our families, but to our own mental health. So I am not telling people to allow others to pile on them. What I'm saying is an obligation, just to make the distinction, an obligation is the idea that we are obliged to do things. And by the way, sometimes we are. As a friend, sometimes we are obliged to do things, to show up, to be there when it's inconvenient. That's where this sense of mattering comes in. We live in a culture driven by tech that has normalized a frictionless life. Tech is here to make life frictionless. That is a Silicon Valley value. Mattering requires friction. We need to know that people are sacrificing, even in small ways, on our behalf. And so when we talk about obligation versus responsibility, obligation can be felt as this heavy burden. Responsibility, though, is this idea that we have the ability to respond to the people in our lives. And it is in that response that we are able to build strong, nourishing bonds. So helping people reframe responsibilities that friendships bring, that long-term relationships bring, that partnerships bring, that parenting brings, and reframing it as our ability to respond to that person, even sometimes at the cost to ourselves, which is why it's so important to also balance feeling valued ourselves. We cannot allow ourselves, I have a whole chapter in the book called Mattering Too Much. And that is not true mattering. When we are never on the list of priorities, that is not true mattering. Mattering requires balance, balance between mattering to ourselves and mattering to others. But mattering also requires us to feel a sense of responsibility to let others in our life know in our words and in our actions that they matter to us. And that sometimes requires sacrifice.
And vulnerability. The vulnerability of saying, if it weren't for you, I ... because that can kind of run counter to that whole bootstrappy, hyper independent, I shouldn't need you.
That's exactly right. So I used to struggle because I have internalized, this self-reliant narrative in our culture. But then I started looking at it really closely, and I came to the realization that nobody is self-reliant, right? No
No.
one is. Even just your birth here on earth was dependent on someone giving birth to you.
Yeah.
And so I've taken to thinking about asking for help, not as a selfish act or as
A sign of weakness.
or a sign of weakness. Instead, I think about it as letting someone else know that I value their wisdom,
Yes.
I value their help enough to ask for their help, that they
That they
matter.
matter.
So in this way, asking for help isn't weak, it's a sign of generosity.
Yeah.
And I think if more of us thought that way, we would be able to unlock people's mattering just by asking for help.
Yes. Yes. It's a really, really nice reframe of it. I want to make sure that we have a chance to talk about mattering in intimate relationships because people come to Reimagining Love for support in all of their relationships, but especially in their love lives. So what were some of the takeaways that you learned about the role of mattering specifically in the intimate partnership realm?
Well, I think that the reason partners feel like partners is because they feel a sense of priority in our lives. And I'm not always great about signaling to my husband that he is a priority. He is so giving. He's the family cook. He helps, at equal rates around the house. And so I have taken to trying to be more verbal about appreciating him for who he is, not just, honey, thank you for emptying the refrigerator when food is going bad. He's very good about that. Now I say, honey, thank you for going through the refrigerator and emptying it out. You know how much I hate looking at the food that might have spoiled. And I appreciate how you do the tasks that I loathe. And thank you for making me feel like I matter that way. And so it's in the small moments. It's remembering their favorite treat and picking it up on the way home. It's knowing when they've had a hard day at work and tuning into them. One of the ways that we can really let somebody know that they matter to us is to take the time to tune in, to go beyond what they're saying, to really notice when you ask them how was their day and they're a little quiet or hesitant to express it, and to go there and to say, you seem like, something is bothering you. Do you want to talk about it? So we can offer visible support, but we can also offer what I call invisible support. So if you have a spouse that's going through a hard time, you can take extra time to, straighten up their side of the room, make the bed cozy for them when they sit down, take on more responsibility in the household or with the children. So it's really tuning in and responding to them. That is how you feel like you matter. And we often don't take the time to really tune in to each other anymore because we are so busy. We are so busy. So what I'm saying is, can you think of a way to devote 10 minutes of intentionally tuning in to somebody, reading their body language, asking them how their day is, and really pausing, not asking it while you're cleaning up the kitchen, but really pausing to ask, letting them feel every day, even just for a few minutes, like a priority in your life. Mattering, in my mind, is the glue that keeps intimate relationships strong. You feel like you matter to that person.
It goes back to that formula that really has been guiding this whole conversation, which is that mattering is feeling valued and adding value. And I think that in the intimate relationship conversation, there's a lot of kind of like, what have you done for me? Or being, careful about not being taken advantage of or being rendered invisible or being overburdened. And so when we're in that, like kind of keeping the scales even, I think it can make us feel a little bit less generous around the things you're suggesting, the attunement, the little treats, all of that. But I think there is a need to also be asking for that in return. But it is, can we take the risk of being the change that we want to feel in our relationships? So much of what leads partners to create distance from each other is a sort of like a race to the bottom. Like everybody feels unseen and unappreciated. So they put up one more brick in their wall, and so you're inviting us to, just to push back against that and to start to be a part of changing the emotional tone of the relationship.
And you can do that in just simple ways by noticing, something they've done, thanking them for it, putting it on I have a couple in the book that I interviewed, and they started doing this with Post-it notes. They would just thank each other in Post-it notes on the kitchen counter because they had grown distant and they didn't feel comfortable necessarily saying it out loud. It didn't feel authentic. And so they started with Post-it notes. It can start in just small ways like that. And what the research on gratitude finds that expressing that appreciation, valuing the person for who they are is the glue that keeps relationships strong, and that it becomes an upward spiral. So if one person starts, the other person often responds. It is hard. The problem is, I will also say, the problem is that we are overly reliant today on our partners to be everything for us.
Mm-hmm,
and I will say that if you are feeling resentful, then really reflect and wonder if you are asking too much of your partner. And should you be having deep relationships, friendships outside of the home that can help to scaffold you emotionally? Because we really have become these one family villages, and it's not fair to partnerships. We're not supposed to be everything. We're supposed to have a neighborhood. We're supposed to have a village. We're supposed to have extended families to help with childcare, to help with everyday tasks, to help with logistics, carpools, things like that. And we don't have them anymore. And so we are overly relying and overly taxing those relationships. So are there ways that you can scaffold around the relationship so the burden isn't always so heavy on the relationship?
Okay, so two things from that I want to triple underline. One is you are helping us remind ourselves that a problem that we're feeling in our relationship is not one that was just of our own creation. That your relationship, your marriage feels overburdened because it actually is. This is historically not how we have done long-term partnership. That's super important to remember because it reduces shame. It's a reminder to kind of look at that bigger picture. But the other thing that you said, I think that was such a good reminder of the example of the couple who had grown distant in the Post-it notes. A lot of, that's a lot of my couple therapy is working with couples really who have drifted, and we're trying to kind of help them find ways back to each other. And that can feel shameful to, I'm always sitting with my couples about like, what are the ways we can start to inject some positivity that is titrated, where it's not like, not asking them to be making love 3 times a week when they have really lost each other in that way. But what are the titrated risks that can start to really like create some softening and some connection, and that I don't want people to feel burdened by like the shame in that, because whatever the two of you are doing to reclaim some sense of connection or play or levity, that counts. There's nothing that is too small to be a step in that direction. And they do, like you're saying, that Sue Johnson used to talk about vicious cycles and also virtuous cycles.
There was a woman I interviewed who would send her husband a text every day after the kids got off to school. And it would be, thank you so much for helping, John with his homework last night. I'm so grateful to have such a loving husband as the father of my kids. These little thank yous. And another gentleman wrote a note to his wife every Friday afternoon to set the tone for the weekend about one thing he appreciates about her. So these don't have to be huge, long love letters. It can be small things. It could be, thank you for example, Thanksgiving. Thank you for making such an amazing meal, or thank you for really giving my mother the attention that she enjoyed over the holiday. Thank you for engaging her in conversations about things that you don't care about. These little things. Thank you for just the thanks. And again, it's not the thank you for the deed. It's the thank you for who you are. You matter. You matter here.
And I see you.
And I see you. And I appreciate that.
You extended yourself. I saw how you extended yourself. Yeah. Okay. Before I let you go, I do want you to just give us some straight talk about the culture of flaking and bailing and canceling plans. You cite the APA research that indicates that a full 25% of us have canceled on plans in the last month. Like, good on us to admit it. But what do you want us to be thinking about in terms of flake culture that seems to be, a bigger problem now than it was historically?
I will tell you that when you flake, you are hollowing out your friendships. And so what I would love and what I've done myself is I've created what I call personal policies in my life, things that I do and things that I don't do. And one of my personal policies is that I do not cancel plans unless I am sick. Period. I don't flake on friends. I just don't. I will tell you, because I don't, even when I'm busy, even when I'm tired, even when I'd rather be in my pajamas, sitting on the couch, I do it because I know that when I flake, I am sending a very strong signal to my friend that they don't matter. And I know that that is a slow erosion of a relationship. And then we look back and we say, why do our relationships feel so hollow? So what I will say is create some personal policies for yourself. You can adopt mine. Unless I am sick, I do not cancel plans. And that's it. It's just a simple rule that I live in my life. I don't have that many personal policies in my life, but that is one of them.
Well, it also means that then when you make plans, like that, then there's maybe you bring a bit of intentionality. If that's your policy, then it also makes you more intentional, I imagine, about saying yes when you can actually say yes, and maybe not saying yes if it really does feel like you don't have the capacity in that moment.
Exactly. And again, circling back to what we talked about earlier, it's about managing my energy. So I know tonight I have, a late dinner with someone in from out of town. And so I am going to pace myself so that I can show up and be a good friend to my friend who I don't see often. So again, it's about, where are you putting your energy in your day? And I think about my energy in buckets. Derek Thompson, who is a writer, wrote a great Substack talking about, I don't know if he called them buckets, but the different domains of your life, and thinking over the course of a day or a week or a month, where you're putting your energy. Is it all to work? Is it all on yourself, which is not helpful? Is it all on your kids, which is not helpful? Or are you balancing your energy into the different domains of your life that are important for you and for your social health?
Well, I think that's a perfect note for us to end on. So Jennie, tell us, we've obviously got links to your fantastic new book, Mattering, The Secret to a Life of Deep Connection and Purpose. But where else do you want people to connect with you?
Well, I'm always trying to give advice on Instagram. So you can meet up with me on Instagram, Jennifer Burhenny Wallace. And I have a newsletter on my website, jenniferbwallace.com.
Great. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennie, for what is ultimately a really hopeful conversation. I think framing our growing sense of disconnection and the resulting mental health implications through this lens of mattering makes perfect sense and is extremely powerful. It offers an opportunity for us all to tune into fresh ways to make space and reserve energy so that we can build up a robust community of connected individuals who recognize the value that they bring by simply showing up. Telling people that they matter as our 2026 act of collective rebellion? Let's go for it. You're going to find links to Jennie's book, Mattering, The Secret to Building a Life of Deep Connection and Purpose, as well as where to learn more about her in our show notes. Okay, so next week, we are talking with Jessica Boehm about attachment and how to develop a deep, lasting sense of safety in ourselves through our relationships. Until next time, be well. Do you have a relationship question that you want answered on the show? Visit reimagininglove.com to send in a written or audio question. Questions can be about intimate partnerships, family relationships, friendships, you name it. If you're looking for more love and relationship content, you can find me on Instagram at dr.alexandra.solomon or visit my website, dralexandrasolomon.com, where you'll find my blog as well as the Intimate Relationships 101 e-course based off of the popular class I teach at Northwestern University. Thank you for listening and see you next week here on Reimagining Love.